You're listening to Kayak Flyer with your host, Sean. This week we're brought to you by Tennessee Trailers, OutdoorAdventureTrailers.com, the best way to get your kayak to and from the water. Cutthroat Furled Leaders, the only leaders that I use. Cutthroat Furled Leaders are guaranteed to perform for whatever species of fish you're chasing. Check them out at cutthroatfurledleaders.com. Save 15% promo kayak. Stoneflynets.com, the very best in handcrafted and custom fishing nets made in the great state of Arkansas. Check out Stonefly Nets at stoneflynets.com. You know, one of the great things about the show, and I say it almost every week, is that we have really interesting guests. And this is the first time I've gotten to talk to somebody who raises hackle. So Jesse LaRue is with us tonight. You've got a very new, I guess, really, a new company. You said you're getting ready to move into your fifth generation on some of your birds. Just tell us what it's like with Grumpy Platypus Hackle and what all it goes into having a hackle farm.
Hi, and thanks for having me. So what it takes to have a hackle farm is taking everything you know about any sort of poultry farm and throwing it out the window, because most poultry farms are generally hen based, and while I do raise hens as well, the roosters are the money makers. And so we have to kind of find little ways to make them not find amazing and creative ways to kill each other. And it's it takes a lot of work. It takes an incredibly long time, especially in a poultry setting, to raise out a bird. It's about 11 and a half to 12 months. And this guy is actually right at that age here.
Nice.
And you essentially have to breed the best, and the rest of them end up on flies. So this is actually, like you said, I'm getting into my fifth generation of my wet fly line, and what I've done is taken some choice birds and crossed them with dry fly birds, and sort of set their feathers to go the other direction, where my dry fly line will definitely feel a lot more like straw in your hands, stiff, very nice barbs. They bend over. We don't want that webbing and dry. Well, you do want that in a wet line. And to be honest with you, like, these feathers get incredibly soft for the wet line. I think they feel more like chinchilla fur. This specific kind of color that I'm working on here is to make a very nice dyeable bird. He's a very, very light dun grizzly, but I'm actually kind of breeding directly for that to make a better kind of dyeable bird, so you can get into those predator colors, the saltwater colors that just go bonkers. But I do maintain very, very natural colors as well. I like to try to get Cree, which is, everybody seems to like Cree, which is 3 colors in a straight line on a bird. And what that actually is happening when you do that, you're essentially breaking the chromosome to get a double expression. And that's why there's so many different variants of it. It's an unnatural, out of nature sort of thing that's happening. You're essentially tearing a chromosome and forcing it to go to another spot on the chromosome and then express those less expressed genes. You can get some really weird stuff out of it. I also work really hard with making incredibly clean badgers, as well as really, really speckled badgers. And I have a few other projects too that you're kind of the Pardo colors that come out of Portugal and Spain. I've been messing with that. Now, they have 300, 400 years on me, but I kind of set out about it, and I said, it's just a chicken, so you should be somewhere. If I were to be really honest, I doubt I'll get that color into dry fly in my lifetime, but it's still making some interesting products, some interesting colors, and uh, I I do my best to keep them as ethically handled as possible.
Hmm.
When it comes to how you house them, I actually give each one of them their own little cage. And it sounds bad. It sounds, well, why would you cage a bird? But they feel very safe. They don't hurt each other. I don't have to mutilate the animal to be able to behave around others. I don't have to blind it. And for me, where my end product is Hackle, my end product is another breeder, and I want the most intact bird at the end of it. And I I love animals, so I don't want to
Yeah.
hurt them. I don't want to do some of the practices that other people end up doing. So I find that uh, making them a big cage so they can turn around, they can walk. I mean,
Yeah.
the industry standard is something like zero point 0.9 square feet. These guys have four plus times that, and
Yeah.
they have a big open top to the cage. They have access to water 24/7. I feed them way too much food. I really do try to make sure that they have everything that they want. And
Yeah.
in that little setting, they get used to that. They feel safe. They know that food comes. I mean, one of my favorite things is they get all excited when I come in to feed them, and then as they start eating, they all kind of purr and coo after they do their little call to tell the other chickens, "Look what I found for you!" But of course, I'm giving it to them. They are
Yeah.
very greedy and ungrateful. Um, and
Yes.
one of the things that I've learned is I have to breed really high for testosterone, and so they can get aggressive, and that's something
Mhm.
a lot of people don't realize that uh, it's not their fault that they can get grumpy, that they can get angry, but at the same time, you have to work with that. You have to let the animal be able to manage that well.
Yeah. Nothing says love like being flogged by a rooster when you're walking through the backyard.
Yep. I have one. I have a couple high school kids that come out and help. And there's one of my breeding pens. They go in with a big shovel, and that shovel is dented to heck from a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
roosters.
Yeah. Having grown up around layers and fryers most all of my life, and my father in law has a hobby farm now, and he's got just tons of chickens, but it's talking about roosters, particularly. You can't have roosters together because they can get mean with one another.
And they'll fight and they'll damage each other,
Hmm.
and it just I mean, I can get to right around 4 months that they do fine. I
Right.
could probably go another month, but I separate them out at that point, get them acquainted in where they're going, their living space, and then they get safe. They feel safe. Then they can yell at each other all day long, and
Yeah.
uh, it is kind of I do it more to get them acclimated and get them in a correct space, um, and really, like, that's one of the main things that keeps me a small hackle farm is it's very expensive to do that kind of caging. It takes space, it takes a building, it takes work building the cages, it takes the money to do it. And then the thing is, what it ends up making me do is I have to go to each one of those every single day. And so, I mean, I kind of did the math one time, and I'm not a glamorous job. I make about 2 cents an hour per bird.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, of a morning you go out and you open the coop for the hens and they come out and you throw them some seed and whatnot, you throw them some chicken feed, and then in the evening you come back and you put them in, but you've got them in a caged area again, a large caged area, but predators are something you have to worry about here in Missouri,
yep.
that will get in there with them, and so then you put them all away in the coop at night, And it's not easy just for somebody with layers and fryers. The idea of putting together something where the feathers are the most important part and trying to keep them from tearing each other apart and things of that nature. 'Cause chickens can be very mean,
And you'd
especially
be
roosters.
surprised that it's the hens that cause the most damage. They, especially as they get laying, they look for protein sources, and
Mhm.
the keratin of feathers. They'll just sit there and just pick a rooster bear. And I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I have a boy that'll throw 3 foot saddles, and that's a little abnormal for what comes out of me, but I I popped him in. I have some hens on him. I haven't seen him have a saddle in probably a year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, and people don't, I mean, the animal kingdom, I mean, like it or not, it's not a nice kind movie where the animals all get along in nature. I mean, they're all eating something. And when you go into the hackle farming situation, I mean, that's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, but man, they do turn out beautiful.
And they do, especially if you handle it in the right way. I've tried several ways. I mean, the single bird per cage system has been the way that I found that I can get the product out. The animal is happy, and to be honest, the performance went way up once they really had their own little spot.
Hmm.
And really, that's what I have to go for. Um, I have a fantastic set of neck birds, and I've had some great assistance from a mentor. And then I actually bought my original dry fly birds from Alsdorf Genetic. I bought him out completely, and he was out of Spartansburg, Pennsylvania. I went. I found out I can drive 22 hours to go get birds. It was a very interesting place to go. A beautiful Amish community. But the guy that I bought them out from, he's helped me out. He's the guy that said, "Okay, now you have to experiment with it. Now you have to see what's going on." And then I have another guy that helps me out a whole bunch, and he helped me learn exactly what the genetics were that I'm looking for, because I really want to. I want to really improve my saddles. I really want to make
Yeah.
that go, and there's actually massive work that goes into, you have to watch them when they're born. You have to watch them at 2 weeks. You have to watch them at 5 weeks. You have to watch them at 3 months, 5 months. You have to make sure you get everything, just so that you can get even a nice little saddle that comes out. Yeah, we're gonna hold you funny. I know, but even this boy actually has a particularly nice performing saddle. Like I said, he actually is becoming a breeder for the fifth one. But you can see that just to get everything kind of packed in to one bird,
Hmm.
um, it's not it it one of the easiest ways I can say it is you can have genetic hackle and you can lose it in a generation if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm actually going several ways with my wet line. I want wide feathers for the musky guys. I want long feathers for the saltwater guys, and um, but that part, and like a lot of people get focused on like the colors. There's easily what 21 things that I look for in the feather alone, just to keep a bird going, and just keep a line going.
Hmm.
And then you can look at it in a bird and you can try to get that to happen, and your breeding could actually just go horribly wrong. You can miss stuff, and it takes a long time to even figure out, oh no, I think I've messed up.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of work in it, where I would say I'm more of a breeder than a hackle maker. Like I said,
Right.
my hackle is really my secondary product. The first product is keeping the line going.
Right. When when you're talking about especially the wet fly hackle, We tie a lot. I tie a lot of feather game changers. They work incredible for smallmouth bass in our rivers around here. I love them. I tie a lot of wet hackle. I mean, I've got the same dry hackle that I got when I first started tying flies because I just don't tie that many dries. But man, I blow through the wet ones. Um, and almost everything on the chicken can be used as far as the feathers go. There's minimal waste, correct?
Yeah, at this point, the waste that I kind of say that I do have is I just don't have the room to really keep the wings and dry them
Right.
out. I'm trying to get to that point. Like I said, I'm little. Um,
Hmm.
I do small batches. I actually process about 3 birds at a time, and that's what I have the room to do. I'm working on building a thing that I can do maybe 40 birds at a time, but
Right.
uh takes time, takes money, and so does the rest of my farm.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and the thing is like I said, I have a couple high school kids come out, but I'm one guy doing this.
Yeah.
And it's I can wake up in the morning and my tractor has decided to pee all over the ground, and I'm like, oh, I
Yes.
still have to get everything done. But um, I have to touch on that yes, the reason why I went for the wet line group, and speaking of your game changes, I really am working on really trying to bring out some amazing colors and hens,
Yes.
and trying to bring new stuff to the market. I'm trying to be ahead of the market, and
Mhm.
that takes throwing a lot at the wall and hoping
Yeah.
something sticks. And but you're absolutely right. I kind of say a dry fly cape you will give to your grandson, but I can sell the same color to one guy in wet 3 times a year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the way it is.
Yep.
I had a former student whenever I was teaching at one of the schools I was at, and they did a lot of stuff with poultry, but they raised specialty pigeons. And
Oh,
I'd
nice.
never seen pigeons that looked anything like this. And they would go all over the United States and show these birds. And then they would wind up selling some of them to other breeders. And it was really interesting to listen to her talk about this and how passionate she was about it. And then to go to her house, because her dad and I used to drink beer together. I'd go over to their house and I'd get to see these birds and how they were, and all the care that went into it. And it was just amazing. But you've got to be careful because it's not, when you're making something like this, not every bird that comes out is going to be what you need. And so that's got to be a interesting area to be in because you're looking for certain genetics in them, and then you sort of removing the ones from one group. I know I had a friend that raised koi fish, and he would only pull out certain ones for breeding, and then he would, the other ones that were small would go in the bait bucket, and the other high school kids would come by and get them from him, because they're just their little carp. So how is that process? How long does that take whenever you have chickens hatching on a regular basis?
So, one of the things that I'm really actually kind of like, I can give you kind of an example where this line used to have 2 generations ago. I had a great big tail that would go up and over, but I actually am trying to breed out the tail because of how much energy it takes to make a tail feather, and I'm trying to get that energy more into like the mutant sickle feathers, or schlappen, as you guys call,
Hmm. Yep.
and as well as the saddles. And in 2 generations, I've gotten that down on this one. And but I'll still throw a tail. It kind of varies. I mean, I can have a bird with perfect feathers come out, but he'll have bad legs. Like the long legs in genetic hackle is actually one of the most difficult things to keep. It's something you wouldn't really think of, but on my grading scale, which is for my wet birds, it's 935 points. I have a spreadsheet thing, and then for my dry line, it's 865 points. On both of those, the legs is 300 of those points. I mean,
Wow.
if I don't have it there, I can't move the bird ahead. And I have had amazing birds come out, but not have that desirable leg or the body size. Um, I worked in a very, very large group of Brahmas, and I've actually had to size them down because Brahmas eat too much.
Hmm.
And in a couple generations, you at least start to get everything kind of comes out in a bell curve. So the really nice stuff is this end of the bell curve. The really
Right.
bad stuff is this, but then you have this middle product. Hey, buddy. And and in that you have to you really have to kind of watch for a group of things where I mean a Brahma bird's going to eat 4 times the amount of feed in a year versus a smaller bird, but I want those long necks. I want
Right.
the big wide backs, and so I can sort of work with shaping that in. And it's more of a I would like to go this way. It doesn't mean put this bird and this bird together. It's let's try these birds and see what comes out
Mhm.
and work with it there. But
Yeah.
with my dry line, oh my goodness, I haven't I actually have had amazing gains in just a couple generations in my wet line. As soon as I kind of figured out what I was doing, I had product. I had things that come out, but at the same time, is like, man, the really good stuff. I have to keep this back. I need to start getting my numbers up. I need to get good
Hmm.
hands, and then you try to move around colors and things like that as well. The color's the easy part, but moving that to where you want, you might lose something in the process. Like the bird might sit lower to the ground or higher to a higher neck or something, where you kind of want a nice flat back so that the saddles can grow nice and even so that it looks really good in the package. And
Right.
and in the end of it, it's trying to get there, taking the best of what, okay, this did this and I got this far. And you know, I've had discussions with Tom Whiting before, and he said it pretty nice one time, as he said, you know, I've spent my whole life looking for the perfect bird and I've never found it, but I sure have gotten some that are darn close. And that's and that that actually kind of changed my way of looking at how I do this as well. He's a direct, he could be a direct competitor, but he's a big guy compared to me. I'm a
Yeah.
little boutique
Yeah.
guy, and my birds are different than his. And even the other little Hackle guys around who are amazing people. I mean, Sidling Hill, like he's an awesome guy. He's fun to talk to, and man, he's getting some great birds as well. And I know he's taken over Collins, who, man, I'd love to talk to that guy sometime because he's just a neat guy. Um, and kind of in the process, like I have found it's difficult for Hackle guys to want to talk to each other. We try to
Yeah.
be it's we're direct competition, and you know, I've been trying to kind of break down that wall. I've reached out to these people. I've been really personable, especially when they want to be back. And to me, that pays off in the end, because the fact is this isn't an exact science. This is a group of genetics that people have learned how to mess with, but then handing it down, it's someone learning it all over again. There's nothing written on how to do it. There's nothing um there's just no available information on how to breed feather birds.
Yeah.
And 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 of course, then you're essentially given a blank slate. You give it a shot, but like I said, you can lose it in a generation. And
Yeah.
there's little Hackle guys that, you know, have a few occasional birds or something like that, have gotten a hold of some, and there needs to be a little bit more of a camaraderie, because the, especially as we move into flies that are more based on synthetics and things like that, the idea of keeping this alive is it's a dying passion. It's the original guys, Darby Hoffman, Andy Miner, all those guys talked to each other. They loved each other. That Doc, those people were great friends. I mean, they'd even trade birds with each other and things like that. they got it going. They talked to each other. They were friends enough, like, because they all had a passion. And this is it. I walked into a world where I found out is like, wow, nobody wants to talk to me about these.
Mhm.
Um, and that's always been really tough to kind of, swallow for me. I want the people in it to be able to talk to each other, because if we bring that back, I mean, the sky's the limit on what we could do with these birds. And
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you talk about I mean, honestly, the genetic modified hackle, it's what, maybe the 1950s or so when we started doing that? When we
Right.
started really trying to move birds into this category?
Yeah, a lot of people know about Harry Darby starting in the 30s, and but to be honest with you, he really just liked the pretty colors. He didn't
Yeah.
have the ideas as to how to make that happen. And Hoffman, he went ballistic with them, and did start making very, very good birds, but only in a couple colors. And it really wasn't until the 70s when Andy Miner got a hold of birds, and my dry line come from Miner lines at some point, but that means nothing based on who managed them afterwards.
Right.
But he was the one that really started getting the other colors worked in. You start to see like diluters, like dun and blue dun, and then the
Mhm.
reds and the ginger bards, browns. Sorry, there's
Mhm.
chicken colors and there's hackle colors. I apologize that I speak
That's
in
fine.
both.
That's fine.
um and getting those out, like there have been people along the way that just outshined everybody. And of course, like Dr. Tom Whiting, I mean, he's at the pinnacle of what they can do. And he's doing, I think he's done an amazing job. At the same time, i I kind of joke is like, well, he's different than me. He's someone else. I've actually, I kind of, I get a lot of people like, oh, well, how do you compete with that guy? And my question is, I don't.
Yeah.
I go do my own thing. And getting through that has been a really beneficial way. And he's wished me good luck. And I have said the same to him.
Yeah, and I think, that's something that, especially when we're talking about, and you're talking about somebody who's creating synthetics or a hook manufacturer or some of these things. Those are really just processes you go through with raw materials and you produce something. The chickens, that's a whole nother thing. I laugh at my wife. Her brother's dog went over to visit the neighbor, and so there was this litter of puppies, and they all looked exactly alike, except for one. And of course, my wife gets the one that is the oddball. And so the rest of them were like little weenie dogs that were part poodle, and they didn't shed, and they all look like weenie dogs, and they're all really small. And I've got this weenie dog that weighs 20 pounds and is about 8 inches tall at the shoulder. I mean, she's massive, she's huge, and she's short haired and everything. And I'm like sitting here going, now I've got hair all over the house and everything else, but it's, those genetics don't just happen. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Right. And in it, kind of one of the cool things about like genetic hackle is, first of all, they're not a recognized breed. They're kind of called mutts. But the reason for that too, like you say, like the little poodles that are like hypoallergenic or whatever, that's a breed of an animal.
Hmm.
Like a German Shepherd should look about the same as when you bought one in the 1940s versus when you buy one now, because they have a
Right.
standard. And that standard holds an animal to a group of settings that it stays in. Where genetic hackle is amazing, and why it's not a breed is it's always supposed to get better. So we're
Yeah.
not stuck in, we need to do this, we need to do that, we have to keep this tail, we have to keep this comb, we have to keep these eyes. it's not that sort of a deal. It's they're a fantastic mutt, and to be honest, that's probably one of the best things going for them, because they are very, very predisposed to repairing work that goes through like line breeding. So you know, I hate to put it this way, but you know, if it works, it's called line breeding, and if it doesn't, it's called inbreeding.
Yes.
But
Yes.
genetic hacklebirds are special. Real genetic hacklebirds are special in the fact that they have a propensity to be able to throw a repaired genetic if you start to get into ingress. You know, and I've found that amazing, because you can have something where the stand where the quality starts to go down, and because of that, and then all of a sudden just out pops this perfect bird in the same group, and you're just sitting there scratch your head like, well, I don't know how that happened. And
Yeah.
but that's your line's savior. It's
Yeah.
done it. It's done it for you. And the genetic hackle birds have a really good propensity for that, as well as being able to get that so that they maintain their fertility, which is a huge deal in line breeding and such, is you can lose that very easily. Um, and like you said, with your dog that sheds all over the place, yeah, there is stuff that you can either lose or pick up along the way, and sometimes you might not even see that, because it could be held in a female that instead of the male, where uh I've got this one group of wet birds right now, and they do this amazing little tiny barring on the outside of the badger feather. So you know, you have the black on the inside and the white
Hmm.
on the outside, and I get little barring in the white, which I kept that around mostly because I've always wanted to try to make that color champagne, um,
Yeah.
and and um, and I don't think mine will ever be the same as what people call champagne, but it sure looks like I'm on a path to kind of get there. And then I've gotten it into dun. I've gotten it into blue dun. I've gotten it into golden badger. I've gotten it into dun golden badger. But the second that I hit red, the whole thing disappears. And
Yeah.
so I can't do it in furnace, which must mean that it's a silver rider. But we get to watch and play with mutations. No other chicken breed would ever accept something that we call speckled badger. That is not
No.
okay. But where we get to
No.
say, hey, let's see how messed up we can make this.
Yeah. Yeah. When you
And
go to buy Rhode Island Reds, you want the Rhode Island Reds, you know?
Yup, and you don't want, yeah, you don't want something to throw something with barring or something like that in it.
Yeah.
You are purchasing what you looked at as a picture of a bird in a catalog, and it better be this when I get it. So
And it's gonna lay like this, and this is what it's gonna do, and it's all right there, and the birds are all identical, and which it cracks me up because my father-in-law, God love him, he's one of these guys that'll like go to the poultry swap or whatever. So he has like 30 chickens and they're all different chickens,
oh,
but he's using them for layers, as for 95% of it. But it's hilarious to me to watch. Um, but when it comes to the genetics, I mean, you for people that, and some people may not know this, I don't know, but when you have chickens, you take the eggs, you put them in an incubator, and then you take them. You generally keep them inside in a heat lamp, and you feed them while they're little, and they get to be pips, and they grow up a little bit. How long is it for you to start making those selections of which ones are going to wind up being good birds, or do you have to raise all of them up to that 8 or 9, 10 month size and then see which ones are going to go on to be breeders, or how you're going to do that?
so there are specific things that I watch for. by the time they get to 5 or 6 weeks, you have a pretty good idea of sort of what direction they're going. And then, 3, 4 months, you really know. I mean, there are birds that come out that there are times that a bird comes out and it's like he I can't get a good neck, I can't get a good saddle off of it, and I can't feed those kind of animals.
Right.
It's just I mean, and I love them to death, and I've even had to I've even hunted out and researched and came up with a way to ethically put them down. Um, uh, where I actually use carbon monoxide on that because I found out they don't gasp, they don't even know it, they go to sleep,
Yeah.
and it's painless. And as far as I could come up with is like, okay, that's the easiest way. And I'll tell you, I had a farmer teach me how to kill a chicken, and then I went and tried to do that, and I messed up a couple times, and it made me feel awful. And so I can't, I mean, and because of the way I felt for making even that animal that had it wasn't its fault that it has to get put
No.
down.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that I don't do that again. And
Yeah.
so
And
I'm not kidding. I
I'm
think I
not
spent.
laughing.
It's okay.
I'm not laughing. I've just been to too many times where you have the family over and you butcher chickens, and that is a process.
That is
If
a
you've
mess.
never butchered chickens or butchered hogs,
Yeah.
we butcher hogs every year, and it's like this is a whole nother world. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's one that's going to go bad really fast. So I
Uh,
wasn't laughing. I
oh
wasn't
no.
laughing about. I was reminiscing, I guess, in my head about some of the crazier things
I've
that have
helped
happened
with
when the new
hogs
guy came in.
twice. And
Yeah.
I've helped with hogs twice, and one time, yep, I know when you said, yep, sometimes it gets a little, yep,
Yeah.
oh my, I was not, I was amazed at how resilient they are.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's I mean, we're obviously we're the talking about, being a farmer, or having livestock. I mean, there's obviously the end of that product is food.
Mhm.
Um, just like anything else. Um, but sometimes I think there's a disconnect for people that don't live in rural areas or don't have that experience of growing up on a farm. And
I,
that's
you're
always something I feel because I've been lucky enough. I've never lived in a really large place.
Well, and I sold half a cow to a couple from Boulder, and the wife asked me if I had to kill the cow for the meat, and I said, well, it would probably hurt if we didn't. So
Yeah, yeah,
and there is a disconnect, and I am actually a new farm owner. This was something. It was a long series of interesting events that led me to this farm. But I was originally born in the big city, um,
okay,
and I find myself learning stuff that kids in 4-H already have done,
yeah,
and 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 as a result of that, like I got really involved in 4-H. I got really involved in the FFA, and I really, really, really like to help those kids because the thing is they know something that I had no idea walking into. It's an amazing set of skills that they get, and farm life is you can't fathom it living in an apartment complex in the middle of Denver, Colorado. I mean,
yeah,
you kind of come out as like, oh, pretty cows. Oh, you have to work those things? What?
yeah, yeah.
um,
They need vitamins and they need grain and they need water and ironically enough, they need something to rub their back on.
yeah,
I mean,
and then the boys, you have to do things with a knife with
yeah,
them, and it's like, oh
yeah,
my, and
yeah,
like, and I've got a couple cowboy friends that have come out and is like, yep, you're doing it, and I'm like,
yeah,
yep, and they're like, do you want
yeah.
to eat them? And I was still like, nope.
That's a delicacy, man. So I think it
Actually,
would.
Actually, the here apparently Ovid, Colorado, which is just a little ways away from me, is apparently the Rocky Mountain oyster export king of the world.
Yep.
Good for them.
Yep. I'll tell you what, I think it would be more fun if whenever you went to the grocery store to buy eggs, you had to reach into something, and then if you got the scale with the lump, and then there was a soft tube, and then the lump, and then the soft tube, you'd realize real quick what you were doing. Because I was 5 the first time I reached up underneath the chicken, and there was a big snake that had eaten, and you could feel the eggs in it, but it was
Oh,
just like a
yep.
tube. Yep,
Oh,
and people, you know,
I haven't had a snake yet, although I had one on the side of my barn
yeah,
go up the wall, which I was like, okay, I don't like those anymore.
yeah,
But um, I have, yeah, I have dealt with predators. I mentioned that my birds are a little on the aggressive side. I had a possum get in, and it did get a rooster, but it got to the next
oh,
cage. And the reason why I knew it was a possum was because there was 4 pieces of possum in that
yeah, oh yeah.
bird.
Yeah, and if it's a little snake, they'll kill it.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, it's they get wild, but yeah, it's a I just there's that disconnect so many people have where they just don't understand what a farmer goes through. I mean, there are so many things having to pull a calf for crying out loud. If a cow gets down in the middle of the night in the dead of winter, which is what they're always going to do, and then you've
35
got to get that
below.
calf pulled because it's not coming out. Oh my goodness. And that's a lot of money. I don't think people understand just how much a calf is worth.
Absolutely. I mean, and even learning how to do that, I had to take care of a calf. It was unsuccessful, but I had a mama go into calving at 35 below, and like I said, I'm a new I call myself city boy gone farmer. I learned you couldn't cry in 35 below because it was my first calf, and I lost it like right away. And I mean, I couldn't get it to the truck in time. And I mean, there is stuff we do out here. I mean, it's cold this time of year. We're in late December right now. And so my waters freeze up. I have to make sure my cows have water. I have to go change the waters for my little birdies because the automatic water systems would freeze up and I'd lose them. So
Mhm.
that I go around and I do little 20-ounce bottles into the cage twice a day just to make sure that
Yeah,
they have a drink. And
yeah,
I have a few hundred birds that I do this with, and it's tedious and it's cold and it's windy but the thing is I tell you what, I've never worked harder in my life, but I wouldn't trade it for the world at this point.
oh no, it's something that you either have the feel for it or you don't. It's one of those things to watch a guy, have a calf come out and drop down and clean everything out of its nose and hold its mouth shut and to blow into it to get it going. I mean, there's stuff out there that it's another level for people that have never experienced, and all of our farmers, no matter what they're growing, and providing for us, I think really deserve a lot of respect. Um,
Yes.
when because we're heading onto the back end of the show, you said you're more of a boutique. And you've got a couple hundred birds. So I assume you said you're doing about 3 birds at a time. So you've probably got what I would say about on hand at any given time, probably maybe 10 or so capes or hackles. And
Yeah.
can people buy those from you or should they contact you or how do you do that? So our friends
So the
on that are listening or watching can find out.
I do have I'm trying to become a little bit better on Instagram, and that's Grumpy Platypus Hackle with underscores between the words. But if you really want to get in touch with me, find me Jesse LaRude on Facebook. You will see I have a cow and a Cree on my shoulder there, and I have Grumpy Platypus Hackle as my backboard. And then just add me as a friend, and I will absolutely walk you through the process of what I have available. I have lists to get you on for things. And to be honest with you, I try is like if you're looking for something, I'll definitely show you that. I pride myself on making unicorns. So I will try to show you those, and offer them up. I really like to make the unique and odd. That's what got me into these birds to
Yeah.
begin with, because they're genuinely unique and odd. And I'm doing this because, yeah, I've seen other people, like, okay, everybody has cows, everybody has chickens that lay eggs, but I wanted to try something different. I wanted to be different. And
Hmm.
and I've always said, is with my life, is as long as it's an adventure, I'm in the right place, and I've picked a good one. But yeah, so like I
Definitely.
said, I do believe, my Facebook is facebook.com/ and then all one Grumpy Platypus Hackle there as well. And but like I said, add me as a friend. I'm super personable. And I will definitely try to get you what you want. And in a timely manner. I'm finally starting to get some product to roll out. I've had some things go on in my life that did get me a little
Hmm.
bit backed up until recently. But now things are starting to come out. The machine is
Yeah.
starting to work. The wheel is starting to turn, and I'm finding great things out of it as well. So yeah, like I'm
And
in here on a radio show talking about
yeah.
chickens.
Yeah, and we've got a very loyal following. We don't have. There's a lot of fly fishing podcasts that have come out since we've started this one that probably have better ratings than we do, but we're the only one that talks about kayak fishing and fly fishing mainly. So that's sort of a hard audience to grab. Not a lot of guys floating around their kayak fly fishing. Um, but the one thing that I've heard over and over and over again for the last year and a half is people cannot get product. Um,
You're right.
you know,
You're absolutely right. I have seen products just kind of almost deaden out, and only recently have I started seeing some push through, and it's a mad dash to get anything. I have I have several people, like, I like I said, I had to deal with some stuff, but right now I'm just trying to maintain enough
yeah,
grizzlies just to keep people happy right now.
yeah,
I maintain,
yeah,
and hatch some, and as well as keep my projects going, and managing a whole bunch of birds at once, which, to be honest with you, is probably the easy part, because I have a attention deficit disorder, and so managing huge projects and knowing what I'm doing and the direction I want to go with all of them, it keeps my brain going. It keeps me out of the bars,
yeah. Oh yeah,
and it gets me kind of on my way, as to, I have a purpose. I have something that I'm working towards. But
yeah.
yeah, product is difficult to come by right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some guys that I talk to on a fairly regular basis. There's some guys that come on the podcast, and I email them or text them once in a while, and there are guys that I talk to religiously because we've become really good friends. And that's the thing is, you know, I can't meet my demand, and I'm afraid to invest more because what happens when this falls back off? Is fly tying just going to be a fad that just happened for a couple of years and a bunch of people got into it? Or is it going to be something that stays there? And I use the analogy of the bourbon industry. The bourbon industry went through the roof and they couldn't keep product, and a bunch of them started making more product. Well, guess what? Before the bourbon got out of the barrels, it wasn't in vogue anymore. And so you've really
Right.
got to ride that line of what you can and can't do. And so by reaching out and finding guys like you that have a maybe a different style of hackle than what they're used to, or maybe different colors, maybe it's got some different qualities, but there's still some available, and we can support the little guy. We can support the guy who's moving in and creating the next big wave of a color or a style, or however you want to put it. But I think that's integral in our industry, that we support those guys doing the work.
And I appreciate that. And I have found, like, one thing, especially being what I am, I've developed a better customer in the process. And
Hmm.
and and like I said, is where I say boutique, and I'm saying reach out and message me. I make it personal. I'm showing you the critter that will be on your next flies. Um, and sometimes, like I said, with the rural jump is it's a little bit different when that thing's looking at you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And but to get the products, to get the quality and such, I get it to that area where you want you get exactly what you want. And then
Hmm.
if I'm not happy with something, which I'm hypercritical on my birds too, I'll tell you what I don't like about the animal.
Yeah.
And and in that, I mean, I have found everybody's like, wow, this is really good stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't like those schlappen feathers. I just didn't like the way it sat on that
Yeah.
bird. um,
Yeah. And
but
that's
yeah,
the funny thing though. I mean, I tie flies and I'm like, oh, that's going in the ugly box for me to give to one of my friends. And
yep.
they get the ugly box and they're like, wow, this is great. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay.
Here's your treasure. Yep, one
Yeah.
man's trash. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I try
It's
to I do a way where you can purchase the entirety of the bird, which in my opinion you get approximately 5 products. You get a neck, you get a saddle, you get a schlappen, you get the tail feathers, and then especially on my wet line, the feathers between the neck and the saddle. I've been really kind of working at breeding those out for really really nice fibrous feathers, and
mm,
and I have kind of an interest in trying to get as much off the bird. Like I said, about all I lose is the wings, and then just a little patch on the chest, right here. That's no bigger than that. The rest of the bird is used,
yeah.
and taken off. So,
And
um,
when you think about it, there's a lot of feathers. I mean, you've got the chickaboo below the breast, and then you've got, like I said, the schlappen back down there beside it. I mean, you've got all these different materials that you can use on in so many different applications.
right, and so or actually, this is a I always call chicken boot. I just call it what it is. I call it chicken ass. Uh, but
It's the groin.
it is. It genuinely is. But I even grow for that. And one of the things in my wet line here, this is a very light bird. It's kind of difficult to see. But I'm even trying to grow these leg patches out much, much longer so that you get nice. I mean, those are still. You could get a little creative with streamers. I think they'd make
Hmm.
awesome little pectorals for sculpins, things like
Yep.
that. And you can get really 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 creative with some of it, and like I said, is buying the whole bird gets you the whole bird. I'm trying to make it so that, like, I'm not gonna raise a bird just for its neck.
Right.
That's wrong. It's the
Right.
poor thing. Hey buddy, you gonna fight me? But yeah, like I said, and let's see if we can get this boy's.
But real quick, speaking of that, have you ever had one that just had like a saddle that was just so amazing? You're like, I'm just going to have to take him all the way through, even though the rest, he wasn't going to be a breeder. Have you ever had where you've just had like that one portion that was just so wonderful?
Oh yes. And then sometimes you get a neck that you're just like, how did nothing else work on you? And
Yeah.
it's a perfect neck. Like, I mean, grade one through the roof. Like, oh, I almost want to breed you just for that, but everything else sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's got to be a real downer, man, when that happens because you're like so close.
Oh yes, absolutely. Or I mean, I've had a bird with a 19-inch saddle at a year, the neck that was just amazing, but he dwarfed out. I mean, his whole body was no bigger than that, and
Yeah.
he, like, I'm serious. He looked like with his saddle being so long, he'd drag it around like a wedding gown. I mean, and you're like, oh, you poor
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's got to be the toughest part is when something just comes out so good. And
Well,
then the rest of it's like,
and they're all beautiful. They are all
yeah.
beautiful, and so you have to go through, and then you have to judge it. And, like, I've learned that I have to go pick the feathers. I have numbers on the birds. I leave. I go into the house and I do the feather checks. away from the animal, so I'm not looking at it alive. I'm not doing that
Yeah.
as I've had to colden myself to that, because it's like it feels so bad. It's like, I love your personality, but your feathers are less than a 3, or
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not like me. You don't name yours extra crispy and 7 spices and
I
secret
name
recipe.
mine after how much of an asshole they are. I I have Grumpled Stiltskin, I have Peterbilt, I have Dump Truck, I have Dickhead, and I have Mr. Pecky.
Oh, oh, I tell you what, those are perfect names for chickens. Absolutely perfect. They make me cry here. I'm laughing. I know a couple of those like that too, by the way.
Yeah, but
Ah, it was I'll tell you this one story real quick as we're getting ready to wrap up. My wife was at a little town that mainly known for tourism and antiques and whatnot. And the woman goes, "Oh, be careful. We've got a couple of chickens in the back." And I'm like, "Whatever." And my wife's out there walking around, and I walk out there, and out of nowhere, this rooster just flogs me, and I take off, scream like a little girl because I'm wearing shorts. I'm bleeding.
yep,
And I get to the other side and I stop and I look around, I can't find it, and it flogs me from the back again. It flogged me 4 times
yep.
walking around this little antique place. I had to get out of the building. So they can be a little cantankerous.
My legs are covered in bruises. My arms are
Yeah.
covered in peck marks. It's and I wear them with pride because it's what I'm doing. But like I said, I they are aggressive. I do real recognize it is not their fault. And so
Right.
you work with the animal. That's true animal husbandry, is working
Yeah.
with their behaviors.
Yeah. We had a horse when I was growing up, and my sister could ride it bareback without a bridle. She could just hold on to its mane and move her legs. Man, that horse would do it. It would chase me through the woods if I was squirrel hunting. It hated me. And I never did anything. I never did anything to that horse but feed it, and it hated me.
Oh,
So
yep.
they all have their own personalities. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I haven't met a chicken that I don't remember.
Yeah, isn't that the truth from one way or another? Jesse, this has been great. This has been absolutely great. If you guys didn't get what you were looking for Christmas, reach out, man. Reach out to them and have them help you out. And if there's something you're looking for, if you've got a certain type of fly, you want to try getting a whole chicken and trying to see what you can do with some of the wet flies, especially with streamers, because I know so many people, especially around here where we've got great trout fishing in Arkansas. Man, I'm just an hour and a half, 2 hours drives away from some great, great trout rivers, and those big browns love those streamers.
Yes,
You
they do.
smallmouth bass guys, streamers, 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 I'm telling you. So check them out, see what you can do, get a little bit more interesting with some of your tie and try some new things. And this is a great way to do it because you can get the whole chicken, you can see what it's like, and you can work with it and make what you want. Jesse, this has been great.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Oh, and anytime you want to come on, you just shoot me a text and we'll make time. I mean, I love to talk to guests, like once every 8 months to a year. That way
Sure.
we can check back in and see what they're doing and find out what's new and exciting. And we have so many of our followers that really like that really like to hear back from folks and see what's new and what's going on because it everything moves so fast. I mean, like you said, in one generation, things can totally turn and just you can wind up with the wet ones like you're getting now. And so that's just a really great thing.
Absolutely. Well, cool.
All right.
We'll see if he hangs around for the next one.
Yeah, that we will. We'll see that. And for you guys that are just listening to the audio, go over to the YouTube. Go over to YouTube Kayak Flyer, and you can watch this interview over there too, because I know we've got folks that do just one or just the other. But yeah, definitely get over there and look at this great looking chicken.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
guys, we will be back next week.